Hi everyone. I just wanted to go over your week 3 information and your quiz. I hope everyone is having had a good weekend and is having a good Monday thus far. For your information last week, good discussion, interesting thoughts about the different various structured communication methods. One thing I did want to mention about those IHI modules, obviously we only had to do 2 for the course. There's an interesting, if you enjoyed them, there's an interesting certificate you can get. I think you have to do 13 of them, but they're not terribly lengthy. But if you do 13 of them, I think if you go to the top of that page, there's one kind of tab says courses. There's another tab, I think it says certificates, and it's like a basic certificate in quality or something to that nature. If you click that, it'll show you what you need to do. It's just the top one. They have a bunch of different certificates, but there's only one that you can get for free as a student. I'm pretty sure they still offer it for free. But check that out if you have a little bit of extra time. Might be something nice to put on your resume, and could be a nice thing to have for the future. So you might want to check that out. One thing I did want to mention: there's lots of different structured communication methods. They can be really helpful for those of you that are from the clinical setting or are moving into the clinical setting. I know we have some folks interested in nursing or that are in nursing. Those are really important when working in conjunction with physicians. We also have some folks that are from medical assisting, all different types of nursing assisting, all of those different situations where you're working with a provider, be it a nurse practitioner, be it a physician assistant, a surgeon, any different types of providers where maybe you're doing some type of an assessment and then passing that along to the provider. In those cases, you may be working like with the SBAR or one of those structured communication methods where you are making it short, sweet, and providing the detail in a very concise method to the providers. And the example that I use, and I had provided this in the board in one of the threads, is my husband. He's a paramedic, and he regularly uses that SBAR method to pass information along to the ER physicians, but he's also an ER nurse. So he again, sometimes he receives that information from other paramedics, and sometimes he'll use the SBAR method to pass that along to to the physicians himself. When he may receive a report from a paramedic, and then he'll pass report along to a physician. So those are really helpful in clinical settings. But we can also use many different types of structured communication methods. One that I like that's kind of a little looser in structure, but I think is helpful, is a huddle. A lot of practices or departments in a hospital or maybe an ambulatory surgery center may have a short 5-minute huddle, maybe a 10 or 15-minute huddle in the morning before a shift starts or before practice opens for the day, just to go over very short review of what's going on for the day and have, again, very concise, structured, exactly what's going to be discussed. So it's more like a briefing, but oftentimes called like a huddle. So those can be structured in nature as well. So good job this week on that. Did want to go over the before I go over the quiz. So I'll be taking a look at the information that you've submitted. I haven't started that yet, but I'll take a look at the information that you've submitted for your AIM statement. Sometimes some people miss, there's kind of 2 parts to that assignment, and it's, so if you've missed the second part, or if you've missed the 2 parts to that assignment, you may get some feedback on that, because it's not just a matter of filling out you really need to have completed the entire assignment, and what you'll find is that first part that assignment, this is the beginning of the final project. So you'll really need to kind of go back and complete that entire assignment if you have not, because that will really feed into your final project. So please, please, if you haven't already, please look at the feedback that I provide you on your assignment for this week, because if you're not kind of updating your work from this week, that will show in your final project grade. Okay, so for the quiz this week, I've got 4 questions that were ones that folks got wrong. So the first one has to do with midwives, and the question is, in the U.S., midwifery's role in the management of pregnancies has been blank compared to Europe. So the answer was peripheral, and pretty much what this is getting at is that in Europe, midwives are very commonly used. Oftentimes in Europe, midwives will manage pregnancies, and here in the U.S., it's not all that common. I think more and more people are starting to use midwives, but it's not all that common. Far more physicians manage pregnancies. It's far more in the majority than midwives managing pregnancies. So the management of pregnancies in the U.S. has been peripheral as compared to Europe. So our answer in this case was B, peripheral. Second question, allied health professionals include, and our answers, our options were osteopaths, dentists, physician assistants, or none of the above. So an allied health professional is someone other than a person that's received a degree in medicine, osteopathy, or psychology. It's someone that has received a certificate, or they receive a degree, because obviously a physician assistant has a degree. Some have a bachelor's degree and then a certificate in physician assistantship. Some have a master's degree. So it depends on what program they've gone through. I have a friend that became a physician assistant as a bachelor's prepared person, and then went on to get her master's degree. But so it all depends on what type of program they're in, but they're considered an allied health professional, as opposed to an osteopath, who is considered not an allied health professional. They are kind of on the same level. That's a DO. So an osteopath is a doctor of osteopathy, and they are on the same plane as a physician. They really are a physician. They operate as a physician, and the same with a dentist. They're on that same plane. So they are not allied health professionals. They are providers just as physicians. Now, what is confusing is that a physician assistant, depending on your location, many can operate quite independently. They just require supervision from that provider, such as a physician or an osteopath, but they are still considered allied health professional because they do require that supervision, be it general supervision or maybe direct supervision, depending on your state. I believe here in Pennsylvania they require some level of general supervision, but in New York State, where I come from, they do require direct supervision. They have to have someone in the office suite with them in order to, a physician assistant does, in order to provide services. So it depends on where you come from, where you're at. But that's what kind of the difference is between an allied health professional and a physician provider of services. Okay, next one. Basic source of the physician distribution problem in the U.S. is, and there's a few different ones that are noted here: lack of health coverage for all, the need-based model, lack of awareness that there is a problem, and a shortage of MDs. So the basic issue is not necessarily a shortage of MDs. We do have quite a few physicians, but a lot of them tend to be kind of focusing in certain areas and not necessarily We have kind of a geographic issue, and we have issues in certain specialty areas. We have issues in primary care. We don't have as many going into primary care. And we don't have as many physicians going into certain specialty areas that we may need. And the reason for these two issues tends to focus more on the fact that in and around health coverage. So the it's hard to get reimbursed for primary care. It's hard to get reimbursed for some of these specialty areas. So those that are going into medicine are focusing on areas where they know that they'll be able to make payments on their student loans. They'll be able to make up that difference. Or they are going to work in hospitals, being hospitalists, etc. So it really kind of goes back to that lack of health coverage. And the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, is really trying to fix that. Was an attempt to fix that. And the ACA actually put in place some other fixes to try and get more primary care physicians, to try and fix some of the other issues that we have with regard to distribution of physicians across the country. So the hope is that we can continue to try and fix those areas depending on what we see with the Trump administration and how they're going to continue to address their concerns with the Affordable Care Act. So we'll see how that continues forward. And the last question, which type of healthcare facility employs the most people in the United States? So our answers were physicians' offices and clinics, hospitals, nursing and personal care facilities, and none of the above. So our answer was hospitals. Hospitals are far and away the greatest employer of, with regard to these that are listed here. Hospitals employ about 40.5% of folks in the healthcare sector. Physician offices about 10%. Nursing personal care facilities about 12%. So hospitals tend to employ the bulk. But they're also the largest, so they tend to have, they have a 24/7 operation. They are fully staffed 24/7, with the exception of administrative folks, obviously. But they're fully staffed 24/7, as opposed to, say, a physician office, which is only staffed during the day for most cases, and not on the weekend. So they don't have 3 shifts 7 days a week like a hospital would. So it would make good sense that not as many people work there. Nursing facilities, they are also a 24/7 operation, but they don't staff as high levels as hospitals do, because patients aren't, they're not acute care facilities. If someone requires acute care, that high level of care, they shouldn't be in a nursing facility. So it's a lower level of care, and so they don't have to have quite as many staff on. So they do have, they still have more staff than, say, a physician office, but not quite as many as are required in the hospital setting. So if you're interested in hospitals, that's great. They do employ a large number of folks, and there are many across the country. So that's the end of our quiz questions. If you had other ones that you had questions on, obviously please let me know. You can post a question in the Edpuzzle. You should be able to, when you go back into the Edpuzzle, I think it notifies you when I answer a question in there, but if not, you should be able to click back in there when you go back in to go look at the next week or look at your results, and it'll show your commentary. But always please feel free to email me as well with any questions. So look forward to seeing everybody in the discussion boards this week, and have a great week. Thanks.